What if the enemy you fear most has always lived inside you? This is the question that haunts every human being who dares to peer too deeply into the mirror of their own soul. Not the polished reflection that society allows you to see, but the darker corners, where whispers of desire, shame, and memory collide. Here lies the battlefield of the psyche, where Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud once stood as generals, carving maps of the human mind. You stand at the edge of that battlefield now. The silence is thick, as though your very thoughts are waiting for a verdict. Is your mind a labyrinth you can master, or a monster that will consume you the moment you lift its mask? Freud believed that your every gesture, every slip of the tongue, was a fragment of repressed desire clawing to escape. Jung, on the other hand, saw not only your desires, but ancient archetypes, shadows older than civilization itself, moving beneath your consciousness like forgotten gods. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But Freud would argue that your so-called fate is nothing but your buried instincts dragging you by invisible chains. Both men saw the same abyss, yet one named it repression, the other called it shadow. And this confrontation of ideas, this dangerous descent into the hidden chambers of your own mind, is where legend's legacy begins. Here, you will not be told what to believe, but you will be forced to confront what you fear. So tell me, whose vision strikes closer to your truth? Freud's or Jung's? Share your thoughts below, and if the shadows intrigue you, subscribe to Legend's Legacy, where every story leaves you unsettled, but never unchanged. The room is dim, a couch lies in the center, and Freud sits quietly in his chair, watching, listening, dissecting. You lie there, speaking fragments of dreams, half-forgotten memories, the slips of your tongue you wish you hadn't uttered. To Freud, these are not accidents. They are cracks in the surface of your carefully constructed mask. Freud believed the human mind was a pressure chamber. At the top sits your consciousness, the words you speak, the choices you claim as free will. But beneath it lies the unconscious, a vault of repressed desires, childhood wounds, and forbidden impulses. You push them down, bury them beneath politeness and morality. Yet they return, through dreams, through neuroses, through obsessions that gnaw at your soul. Sigmund Freud once warned, "Unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways." In his world, your greatest enemy is the self you refuse to acknowledge. The shadow of lust, rage, envy, and fear, all clawing at the walls of repression. For Freud, civilization itself was a compromise. You gave up raw instinct to gain the illusion of order. But the cost was high, your desires imprisoned, your passions disguised, your freedom shackled by guilt. If you strip away the mask of culture, Freud insisted, you will find a creature of hunger and instinct, desperate to be heard. So ask yourself, when you wake from a dream that unsettles you, when you slip and say what you didn't mean to, is it really a mistake, or is it the truth you've been hiding? This was Freud's warning. Your mind is not a sanctuary. It is a battleground where repression rules, and silence is never safety. But Freud's battlefield of repression was too small for Jung. To him, the human mind was not just a vault of hidden desires. It was a cathedral of forgotten gods. You stand before Jung's vision now. The air is colder, heavier, as though you have entered an ancient cave. On the walls are shadows that do not belong only to you. They are older, larger, collective. Jung called this the collective unconscious, a realm beneath personal memory where archetypes dwell, eternal patterns of human experience. Here lives the hero, forever rising and falling. The mother, both nurturing and devouring. The trickster, laughing at the fragile masks of order. And most dangerously, the shadow, the parts of yourself you exile, deny, and condemn. Carl Jung declared, One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Where Freud urged you to uncover repressed desire, Jung demanded you wrestle with the mythic forces shaping your soul. The shadow was not just lust or envy, it was every truth you refused to face. Ignore it, and it festers, appearing in nightmares or in the cruelty you project onto others. Confront it, and you may gain strength, wisdom, even wholeness. For Jung, dreams were not merely the disguises of forbidden wishes, as Freud believed. They were messages from the deep, fragments of myth stitched into your psyche, guiding you toward transformation. Every symbol was a torch, every nightmare a challenge. And so you must ask, is your mind merely a cage of repression, as Freud claimed, or is it a vast landscape haunted by archetypes, where your fate is written in symbols older than your name? The choice is yours, but Jung warned, ignore the shadow, and the shadow will become you. Two visions now stand before you, Freud's chamber of repression and Jung's cathedral of archetypes. Both demand you face what lies beneath your conscious self, yet they speak in different languages, and their truths collide like thunder. For Freud, the unconscious is a prison built from desire. Every dream, every slip, every symptom is the voice of hunger you tried to silence. The cure, in his eyes, is confession, bringing the repressed into speech, giving words to wounds you tried to bury. Civilization, he argued, is the fragile dam keeping instinct from flooding the world. But Jung saw repression as only one corner of a much larger map. To him, the unconscious is not merely a cage of instincts but a labyrinth of myth. Here, the shadow lurks, yes, but alongside it stand the wise old man, the anima, the hero, the eternal figures that bind humanity across ages. Dreams, to Jung, are not slips of instinct but symbols from the deep, guiding you toward wholeness. Sigmund Freud once said, being entirely honest with oneself is a good exercise. Jung countered, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. One believed your truth was hidden desire, the other that your truth was hidden meaning. Freud's world is a battlefield of instincts restrained by guilt. Jung's world is a mythic journey through darkness into transformation. And so, you are caught between two mirrors. In one, you see the animal you have tried to tame. In the other, you see the myth you are destined to live. Both mirrors are true. Both are dangerous. So which path would you walk? The analytic couch of Freud, where desire is dissected, or the shadowed cave of Jung, where gods whisper in symbols? You now stand at the crossroads. On one side, Freud whispers that every gesture hides desire, every dream disguises repression, and that civilization itself rests on the fragile art of denial. On the other, Jung calls you deeper, insisting that within your nightmares lie archetypes, symbols, and shadows waiting to be faced. Both warn you of danger. Both promise a form of freedom. But here is the truth neither could soften. The moment you choose to look inward, you gamble everything. Carl Jung once said, there is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. Freud would have replied that to seek wholeness is to risk being shattered by the truths you discover. The unconscious is not a quiet place. It is alive. It hungers, it remembers, it shapes the destiny you think is your own. To explore it is to walk through fire. You may come back wiser, or you may not come back at all. Yet to ignore it is worse. For what you refuse to face does not disappear, it rules you from the dark. So the question echoes again. Is your mind your greatest enemy, or your only path to freedom? Will you keep your mask intact, or will you dare to tear it away and face what waits beneath? This is the legacy of Freud and Jung, not answers, but confrontations. They hand you the torch, but it is you who must step into the abyss. Which vision speaks to you more, Freud's world of repression or Jung's world of shadow and myth? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if these journeys into the human soul awaken something in you, subscribe to Legends Legacy. Here, history is not just remembered, it is relived, reimagined, and reborn inside you.